Somebody do it.
But it's got enough battery. That's the only problem about these.
Thank you for being here this morning. Hello, Bob. Good to have you back. Glad your wife let you come back. That was nice of her. She gets married and then he leaves. You always live at least 7 miles from your parents' house. So, but I'm not moving to Texas.
Don't say that.
I've been to Texas. Is my head up? Can you see the ceiling?
Yeah. See that much better this.
Good. Wednesday night, you don't want to see this much of it. And Charity was sitting right there watching.
Now I haven't been there.
We are in Proverbs chapter 14. Verse 12. Verse 12. Proverbs chapter 14 and verse 12 says, what? Pauline?
There is a way which seemeth right unto man, but the end thereof are the ways of death.
When the crowd is running the wrong way, it's hard to be the oddball when running the right way. When the crowd is running the wrong way, it is hard to be an oddball and run the right way. Charity, get that doors. Most of the participants in the NCAA 10,000 meter cross-country run in Riverside, California recently thought Mike Diapicapico was headed the wrong way. He kept waving for the other 127 participants to follow him. But only 4 believed him that he had made the right turn. The turn that all other competitors made was the wrong way. Yesterday I was downtown and I turned up a wrong way. And this girl frantically was doing this. I thought she knew me. Good looking blonde, I thought she knew me. Oh. Sorry about that. Well, I stopped and rolled down my window and said hi. She said, "You're going the wrong way." So I could have said, "I don't believe you," and kept on going. But I believed her. Thank goodness for that. When Mike was asked about the reaction to his mid-course decisions not to let the crowd determine his direction, he responded, "They thought it was funny that I went the right way." First century pagans reacted the same way to the changed lifestyle of our Christian neighbors. The Apostle Peter said, 1 Peter 4:4, "They think it strange that you do not run with them in the same flood of problems, speaking evil of you." 9 Christians spoke evil of those who had changed our lifestyle. non-Christians still think today, 2,000 years later, that following Christ are going in the wrong direction. But actually, believers are headed the right direction. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7 through 8. The route that non-Christians choose, according to Proverbs chapter 14 and verse 12, the route that non-Christians choose may seem right to them, but it leads to eternal loss. Keep on the right path. No matter what crowd is running the other direction. It may seem right to them, and they will say it's right to them, but to them, it leads to the path of destruction. Your notes are in front of you. If you got them, you can do some of them. They left God out of their calculation. People fail to calculate God in their decisions that they make. Man is often mistaken and self-deceived. The way of man, they err in practice. I think I got these notes on the back side of those other notes. My handwritten notes, are they on the back? They're my handwritten notes that I wrote 30 years ago. I think Kurt and Michelle was in that class when I taught this lesson. You remember Proverbs? By the way, we are glad to have Kurt and Michelle with us from Altoona, Kansas. Do you remember the story I tell about the Catholic girl that came to our church? And after a couple weeks and so forth, she came on a Wednesday night, and she said, "I'd like to join your church." And I said, "You have to be saved and be a member. You have to be saved first." She said, "Well, I've been saved." And I said, "Well, how'd that happen?" And she said, "I should let you tell it." And I tell it much better than you. And she said,
Let him tell his version.
And she said, "Well, I got saved between my home and Independence, which was about 30 miles. And I said, "How the heck did that happen?" So I took her to my office, and she told me, and she came back out, and I said, you got to remember that Baptist water is a lot deeper than Catholic sprinkling." She says, "I know it. That'll be fine." So I go home and I tell Charity, Michelle was saved today. She says, did you go with her through the Roman road?" I said, "Well, no." She says, "How can anybody be saved if you don't go with them through the Roman road?" And that was in 1982. 1983. And the reason I know that God saved her, she's here today. Salvation doesn't happen when somebody repeats a prayer. Salvation doesn't happen when a person goes over the Roman road. A person is saved when God opens our hearts and brings them into His kingdom.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Salvation happens when God saves a person, not when they say a prayer.
Right.
He does it in mysterious ways, and you don't have to come to an altar to be saved. Good thing in our church, wasn't it? Sometimes we err in doctrine. So I'm glad that they're here as well. Alan and Angie Harris are setting up, and they'll be singing for us. A life led by Christ's words lead to seemingly good men to hell. The text says, therein. He was unseemingly, ordinary, unexceptionally citizen, but the path leads to hell. the average person who is living this life thinks that they are good citizens, and perhaps to the world they are good citizens. But they do one thing, is that they don't calculate in their lives God. It is appointed to man once to die, and then the judgment. Every person has to stand before God. If I'm going to stand before the judge, then I need to know that I'm going to have a right standing before God. Some have a zeal for religious life, yet they follow the wrong advice. Or they pursue some known sin or indulgence and keep doing it, assuming that everything's going to be all right with God. God is not a universalist. In other words, everybody is not eventually going to make it to heaven. That's a universalist. In other words, some folks say, in the end, God will allow all persons to go to heaven. The latest fad, which is not a latest fad, is that some people believe there is not a hell. Therefore, if there's no hell, then there is no reason to worry about God's judgment. Wrong ways follow in spite of warnings. Right? People are warned all the time. There was a sign that said one way. As a matter of fact, I went back and looked right over the street that I was on. It says no left-hand turn. I saw it, I think. Or was I not obvious? I was not observant, and I turned anyway. We don't get to heaven by simply ignoring the signs that God has established. Many try to persuade themselves that they will be accepted of God. Sincerely, being ignorant of error has never saved anyone from an awful, terrible consequences which such error may encounter. All of us have heard stories about the bridge being out, and two people down at the end are waving fiercely, telling people to stop, and how many people don't stop? They just keep going, and they lose their life. God is adequate in establishing the principles that we need to have in order to make it easy to understand God's salvation.